Does having a gun secure your freedom? I'm going to say no with a caveat. With me today to talk about this deep philosophical journey, Tom Grieve, former state prosecutor and current criminal defense attorney. But before we get into this, I'll let you know that there is a gun giveaway going on. You can enter for free, but it ends really soon. Might not protect your freedom, but all you got to do is click the link down below to reveal which brand new gun you could win. Tom, we're talking about this philosophically. Does owning a gun secure your freedom? I'm going to say it protects your life, but secure your freedom, there's some other steps in there.
Yeah, there's a lot of buffers, to put it mildly. And, moreover, if it's you versus an army of 100,000 bad guys coming to get you, you with your AR-15, you with your whatever, not going to do a whole lot. Now, rest assured, yeah, if there's 100,000 yous out there,
right,
different situation, right?
Yeah.
But that's where we get to that discussion, right, of politics being downstream of culture and all that kind of stuff.
And how do we get to that point? Protecting your freedom does not start with your firearm. It kind of ends with your firearm. When you get to that point where we're going to defend freedom with firearm, boy, we've had some serious breakdown of a whole bunch of other stuff upstream. And I want to start with something as simple as, really good education helps protect your freedom. A good education system helps protect your freedom. The right to vote, and not only the right to vote, but the actual willingness to get out there and do all of the hard, boring work to promote your candidate. That protects your freedom more than your firearm does. As we've said all the time, your firearm is the last ditch. It's the last thing we're going to use to defend our freedom. I'm glad we have it. I don't want anybody, now look at the camera, I don't want anybody thinking that I don't believe that gun ownership in the U.S. is a bulwark. It stands up to bad politicians, to bad policy, to all of that sort of thing. I want everyone in America to own guns and use them responsibly. I'm going on the record to say that. But it is not at the top end of that funnel where that protects your freedom.
Culture.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it comes down to culture, and it doesn't matter what the culture looks like. It doesn't matter what the culture, what matters are the values. And that's tied to, kind of what I like to call the boxes, right? You got your soapbox, you got your ballot box, you got your jury box, and you got your ammo box, right? And it starts with the soapbox, and that's really how do we influence culture? How are we out there trying to interact with other people? Whether they share our values, whether they don't share our values. But culture fundamentally is an arrangement, a hierarchy of values. And how does one go about prioritizing this value over the other value? How do we rank order them? Because, of course, if everything is number one, if everything's tied for number one, that's to say nothing's number one, right?
Yep.
So there has to be some sort of rank order categorization of our values. And how we choose to order those and where we choose to place things, that will create our culture. So the soapbox is what you use to influence that. Voting box, self-explanatory. Downstream of cultures, we've got our voting box. This is what we do in order to say, okay, these are the politicians who are running on these particular platforms. They share my values, and I want to put those people into office to hopefully enact those values. Downstream of that, if things aren't going well, we now have a jury box. Well, okay, we've got politicians that have put some laws into place that I don't necessarily agree with. You get into concepts like jury nullification. You get into concepts like, okay, there's different ways of checking these powers. I say that as a political comment, not as a legal comment. There is a field of jury nullification that is actually slowly developing. In many states, it's completely illegal for defense attorneys to argue in favor of jury nullification. That's something that jurors basically have to do from the grassroots ground up.
Yeah.
But you have your jury box, and then lastly, you've got your ammo box.
And I think important to say lastly, because we want to go through all of those other elements, that soapbox, standing up there and having that right to speak, yes, that is defended, by the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment protects the First Amendment. We understand that, but I don't want it to come to shooting first. I hear a lot of people talking about, yep, it's time to water the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants and things like that, and having been to countries that were involved in civil wars and seeing things like that, I don't want to have that happen here. I want all those other steps to to be played out first, to run their natural course. And one of the things I really love about the United States of America is that we have this sort of peaceful transition of power every few years, and we have elections. And as angry as people get in the United States about elections, voting booths are not blowing up like they are in other countries and things like that. So this idea that the gun and the gun alone protects freedom, I think is true, but the other things have to happen first.
Firearms are not an end. They're a means to an end. Mm-hmm. So what's the end? The end is protection of private property. The end is to be able to worship or not as you see fit. The end is basically to live your life and to uphold whatever purpose or meaning you're seeking. Mm-hmm. There's different ways of describing that, but fundamentally that seems to be what it is. Mm-hmm. Rights, all these things are things that are meant to protect your ability to pursue what you are meaningfully trying to do, for you to find your purpose. That's what rights come down to. But you can't have a discussion about rights without a discussion about responsibilities. Your responsibilities towards yourself, your responsibilities towards one another, within your community, and so forth. And this all kind of lives together, and what we categorize as rights, what we categorize as responsibilities. Do we define those rights apophatically or cataphatically? In other words, are we describing positive rights or negative rights? Negative rights meaning nobody has a right to do this to me, right? Mm-hmm. Negative right being the government cannot regulate my speech. I have a freedom of speech, right? Yeah. Positive right being that your speech offends me and I'm not allowed to be offended, so you've got to stop and you got to change what you're doing, right? That would be an example of a positive right. So we're seeing kind of a change in our culture on this trajectory of away from negative rights that we were founded upon, much more towards a culture of positive rights. We'll see what happens, and we'll see what the downstream effects of all that might mean. I'm sure both for a collection of the positive and the negative, but firearms it presupposes the existence of rights. It presupposes a discussion of responsibilities. It presupposes a hierarchy of values, and that's what people should really be discussing. That's what people should be participating in debates about, to communicate their points, to sharpen their own viewpoints as well. Because that's, you don't learn things talking about someone who you agree with everything on. You learn things by talking to people you don't disagree or you don't agree with, exposing yourself to new viewpoints and so on.
Yeah, and understanding that others might not be thinking the same way you're thinking, but you know what? They still have the freedom. And I love you say it starts with freedom, that, the fact that we have guns way down here to protect all these other things up above them. So the firearm is not the first thing that you reach for, that those education points, that discussion, that the ballot box, all of those other elements. And again, I need to stress, because I can hear people already saying, well, Kevin Michalowski doesn't want to, defend America. Yeah, I do. I've dedicated my life to doing that. I served in the military. I've been a police officer. I want all of these rights in place. And eventually, a firearm might be something that we have to use to defend them. But there's so many more elements above that we should do first before we pull the gun out of the safe and load up and meet with another group of folks and stand up against the military or tyranny or something like that.
Right. And there's a long process and a long discussion that has to happen before any of that, to my mind, any of that becomes even vaguely appropriate. Yeah. Culture. Yeah. Rights, responsibilities, what are our values and how do we rank order them? To me, that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and people who have seen violence don't typically want to rush into violence again, especially if it's going to happen in your backyard. So,
Right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for the insight, Tom. It's always great talking to you. I think this one's going to probably get us a lot of comments, and we'll see how that all rolls out. But I truly appreciate you being here and helping out with that. Folks, thank you for watching all the way to the end of the video. And I will remind you once again, we have a gun giveaway going on. It ends really soon. All you have to do is click the link below and reveal which brand new gun you could win. I'm Kevin Michalowski, Director of Content for the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. And I do support the private ownership of firearms in defense of our freedoms. Just so we got that straight. If you like videos like this, please share them with all your friends. Click the like button up there. Click the notification bell in the corner. We will notify you every time we come out with something new. Stay safe.